have now my special guest, Ron Paul. Let me ask you this. You've lived through many American military conflicts in your lifetime, since the early part of last century. How many of them do you believe were justified?
Well, justified plus legal.
People assume you're a pacifist. I don't get the feeling you are a pacifist.
No, I'm not a pacifist.
I think you believe in military action where it is legitimate. But how many do you think of the major conflicts have been legitimate?
Well, from a strict constitutional viewpoint, I don't want to fight any wars that aren't declared. So that means since World War II, nothing has been justified because we didn't go through the proper process. But when you look back...
Do you support the conflict in Afghanistan?
I did, but that said to go after only those individuals responsible for 9/11, not to go into nation building, not going in, into Iraq.
It was war, wasn't it?
To go after Al Qaeda, it was going after criminals. Matter of fact, at the time, what I did was...
Was it constitutional?
Well, yes, to a degree, because it was limited. But what I introduced was a resolution to clarify this. Don't turn it into an excuse to go into country and occupy countries and take over countries and go into nation building. I said, look to our history about the letter of marque and reprisal. When you're attacked, say at Pearl Harbor, and declared war, that's certainly legitimate. Even though we had a declaration of war in World War I, it was a constitutional war, but it was a very foolish adventure.
What is the ideological difference between being attacked in Pearl Harbor and being attacked at the World Trade Center? I mean, if you are
But a country didn't attack. A bunch of thugs attacked us, not a country. So there's a big difference. There were probably the people, I imagine, and there weren't even 100 people that knew 9/11 was coming. Maybe there were 50, maybe there were 40 for all we know. So it was a band of thugs that had a grievance with us, and they were trying to get our attention. So that's entirely different than...
Have you modified your opinion of what the motivation was? And the reason I ask, you got a lot of flack at the time, although a lot of support as well, for suggesting that the main motivation for the attacks was revenge for what had been going on in Iraq. And I'm sure a lot of it was. But you also said that you didn't believe it was an anti-West sentiment, an anti-riches, an anti-capitalism. I'm not sure that's true, is it? I mean, it's certainly, if you were to interview the 9/11 attackers, I'm pretty damn sure they would also say, we are against Western values, we are against capitalism and so on.
Well, there's no evidence to that. If you read Robert Pape and Michael Schur, you'll find out they're pretty much the experts on the subject, and that's not their conclusion. But if you look at the 9/11 Commission, if you look at the DOD studies, if you look at the CIA, even if you look at what Paul Wolfowitz has said, the great neocon, they've come to the conclusion that our presence in the Middle East was the most significant event on why they wanted to come here and kill us.
And let's assume you become President Ron Paul. If Iran was to strike back at Israel, what would you do?
Well, I go and look to the rules, and the rules are that if our national security is threatened, you explain it to the people, and then you go to the Congress and say, is our national security threatened to such a degree that we declare war against a particular country?
If you believed that Iran had enough enriched uranium to genuinely launch a nuclear attack against Israel, would that knowledge alone mean that you would countenance military action?
One thing that we should set aside is there's our CIA and the Mossad. Israel are not arguing that they have the case, and even Israel said, the leader of the Mossad said, even if they had a weapon, it's not an existential threat to them.
So you wouldn't ever countenance any preemptive strike?
No, not really. Why should we? That's aggression. We're not supposed to commit aggression. I mean, that's left for the dictators. But we now don't do aggression, but what we do is preemptive war.
But if you had got knowledge,
preemptive war is equivalent to that, and I think it's very dangerous.
But they have already said, Ahmadinejad has made it quite clear he believes in wiping out Israel if he got the chance.
Okay.
If you were president in the Second World War, and you'd been given knowledge the Japanese were planning Pearl Harbor, you would have preemptively struck, wouldn't you?
Well, let me touch your first subject first, and that is quoting Ahmadinejad, because that's a misquote, but 99% of the people in the media would misquote it, and everybody in Washington believes it. What he actually said on the proper interpretation was that the regime in charge of Jerusalem should be removed from the pages of time. He did not say that Israel should be wiped from the face of the earth. Just think of the difference on that, removing a regime like getting rid of our administration or something.
You're not seriously defending Ahmadinejad, right?
I'm trying to defend honesty, and I'm trying to defend openness, and willing to stop a war just to
You see him as a threat?
Please
Is he
let
a
me
threat
finish
to
my
America?
sentence. Just like John Kennedy was able to talk to Khrushchev. If we can talk to Khrushchev and he had 30,000 missiles, why can't we talk to a country that doesn't have a nuclear missile? And there are not, according to the record, there are not.
A lot of Americans who, they may like you personally or whatever, but they think you're weak on this because of the preemptive issue. And I come back to that question I put to you. If you had knowledge and you were president when Pearl Harbor happened, if you had pre-knowledge of that happening, would you have attacked
Yeah,
Japan?
an imminent attack. We're sitting there, we're seeing the planes come over, obviously, yes. An imminent attack.
Well, I mean intelligence.
An imminent attack
Intelligence, it may happen.
An imminent attack is quite different when the planes are coming versus this fiction. We shouldn't have such short memories. Everything they're saying about Iran, we said about Iraq, and they were all lies. And how many men died? 8,500 Americans died. 44,000
No, I totally agree with you about Iraq.
Well, it's the same principle.
As a newspaper
you deal with it in the principle.
As a newspaper editor back in Britain, I opposed the war in Iraq vigorously and loudly for 2
You
years.
should oppose us going into Iran.
I think Iran is a different situation.
Why?
Because I think that they would, if they could, consider attacking Israel.
Well,
and if you're America, you can't let that happen. And the Israelis are looking to America for leadership, aren't they?
Why shouldn't they depend on the British? Why doesn't the British take care of them? They have a lot of influence up there. Let all the British kids go up there and die. I mean, why is it assumed that we are the policemen of the world, that it's our moral obligation? Besides, we're broke.
But aren't there times when you have to be the policeman of the world?
No.
Really?
It is not. We provide for our national security. We do not have the authority. We do not have the money, and we don't have the moral authority to do this because it leads to trouble.
Let's take a break. Come back and talk social issues. I want to talk to you about marriage, gay marriage, abortion. See what you really think. Ron Paul. Let me ask you about your view of gay marriage, because I've read differing twists on this.
Okay.
What is your honest opinion about gay marriage?
I am totally neutral on the cause of liberty. When people want to be married and call it a marriage, it's none of my business. I don't want the government to even be involved in marriage.
Well,
I want
to be that state by state now is legally endorsing
Yeah, it's better than the national government coming down and forcing the states to do certain things, either legalize it or prohibit it. I don't like this authoritarian approach at the national.
You're a Baptist, you're a practicing Baptist,
Right.
and you take your religion seriously, so seriously that, unless I'm wrong, you don't even travel with a woman on her own. That's right?
A what?
A woman on her own. You wouldn't travel alone with a woman.
Well, not if it was out of context of what I consider normal now.
Yeah, it's a bit, and that's part of your religious beliefs and so on, and your values. What do you think of gay marriage in terms of values?
I'm not into the value judgment. I know my values, but I don't know other people's values, and that's what freedom is all about, is permitting other people to use
What does your religious belief and your personal value tell you about gay marriage?
Well, mine is that I personally think married to one woman is what is natural and good for me, and it serves me well. And one of the reasons maybe I've been married for 55 years, but I believe I should set examples. I should teach my children a certain way, but I don't believe in the use of force, whether it's economic or social. I don't want to force people into accepting my values, and that's what's so miraculous about freedom, is that I become more tolerant than some people think I should be.
Have you become more tolerant about this issue?
Oh, I became, because of the politics, I've been more forced to talk about it. But I think for most of my growing up, it was a non-issue. I never thought about it.
Well, it wasn't so much a non-issue as most people would have been opposed to it. What's changed in the last 20 years?
I went through in high school and college. I don't remember having a single discussion or a classroom discussion or a political discussion ever on this issue. It's only been in the last 10 years or so that this has come up.
If you became president and you were asked directly, do you personally approve, from a values perspective, of gay marriage, what would you say?
I would personally say to each his own, and I approve it because that's the way they want to run their life, and I respect their freedoms, and that's why freedom works, because it recognizes that what other people do, if I don't recognize what others want to do, I can't have my freedom. My freedom depends on their freedom. So I can set my standards, and then others can decide whether they want to follow me or not, but I would never use force.
You don't believe in abortion under any circumstances. It's something that's driven, I think, by your time as a doctor. You delivered many, many babies. And I read a heart-rending thing you once said, that you once delivered, I think, a 2.5-pound baby that you, as you said, you had to put into a bucket.
Not me. I wasn't a participant. I was a very, very casual observer as a student.
But you witnessed this.
Yeah, I walk in a room and it happened. It was 5 minutes. It was over. I walked out of the room and I, wow, what did I just see?
But it clearly scarred you.
It was that lack of respect for life that it dawned on me.
Here's the dilemma, and it's one I put to Rick Santorum very recently, and I was surprised by his answer, although I sort of understood from his belief point of view that he would come up with this. But it's a dilemma that I'm going to put to you. You have 2 daughters. You have many granddaughters. If one of them was raped, and I accept it's a very unlikely thing to happen, but if they were, would you honestly look at them in the eye and say they had to have that child if they were impregnated?
No, if it's an honest rape, that individual should go immediately to the emergency room. I would give them a shot of estrogen. Or give them,
you would allow them to abort the baby?
Yeah, well, it is absolutely in limbo, because an hour after intercourse or a day afterwards, there is no legal or medical problem. If you talk about somebody coming in and they say, well, I was raped and I'm 7 months pregnant and I don't want to have anything to do with it, it's a little bit different story. But somebody arriving in an emergency room say, I have just been raped, and there's no chemical, there's no medical, and there's no legal evidence of a pregnancy.
So life doesn't begin at conception?
Life does begin at conception, but...
then you'd be taking a life.
Well, you don't know if you're taking a life either, because this is an area that is... But to decide everything about abortion and respect for life on this one very, very theoretical condition where there may have been a life or not a life.
No, but here's the thing. Although it is a hypothetical, it does happen. People do get raped and they do get impregnated, and sometimes they're so ashamed by what's happened that weeks go by before they may even discover they're pregnant. And they have to face this dilemma, and they're going to have a president who has a very, very strong view about this.
And this is like the proposal that the people who like abortion endorse abortion because it's the woman's right to her body. You say, well, does that mean 1 minute before birth you can kill the baby? And I did this on one of the TV programs where some women were opposed to what I was saying. I said, this non-time baby, it's in the woman, she has the right, she argues with her case. I said, you would abort this baby because the woman has had some unfortunate circumstances, so the doctor gets paid a handsome fee to kill this 9-pound baby. Oh, that's not what we're talking about. But that is what they're talking about. They're talking about a human life. So a person immediately after rape, yes, it's a tough one, and I won't satisfy everybody there. But to tell you the truth, what I saw happening in the 1960s and the change in the law and the change in attitude, people were doing illegal abortions. To me, it's a moral problem. It was to change the morality of the 60s. The lack of respect for life leads to the lack of respect for liberty and all the things that I believe in. So it was a change in morality that had the Supreme Court change the law. So I don't believe the change in the law is the magic cure. I do believe, though, very sincerely, if we don't have an understanding of life and have a lot of respect for life, I can't defend people on their personal liberties. I can't be as tolerant as I am on how they use their liberties. So that's why I think it's really a moral issue rather than a legal solution to all these problems. Then, as a physician, as a gynecologist, I've had to face some of these very, very difficult problems, and I understand them. And even before Roe versus Wade, many of those problems that existed, where there's no perfect answer, they were taken care of, but it was always done. They respected the fact that they were dealing with a life.
And just finally on this point, do you accept there's a slight contradiction between a candidate who is pro-liberty, pro-personal choice, pro-personal responsibility in almost every other area,